Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. My Dhamma brothers and sisters and friends, today I'd like to give a talk on freedom from fear. Basically meeting mindfulness and wisdom. We will use mindfulness and wisdom to see how we can really be free from fear. The Pali word for fear is bhaya, bhaya, fear. And the opposite of that is fearless, which is abhaya. And some people are named these names, abhaya. If you hear about the word abhaya or abhayagiri, fearless. Yeah, for now we want to be free from fear and become fearless. But there's also some a couple of words that the Buddha used to talk about another kind of fear, but he qualified it as moral fear and moral dread. The Pali words, the hiri and otapa. So in other words, from a Buddhist point of view, fear is an emotion. It's a quality of the heart and mind that really shrinks, get averse with the present situation. In other words, there is aversion towards the present moment. That's fear. We have aversion towards the present moment. It's the situation that leads us to be debilitated. We cannot move forward because we're afraid to do something and that. But this is what we would say maybe a negative emotion, a destructive emotion. But the Buddha recommended to cultivate another kind of moral fear and moral dread, where he called about we should have hiri and otapa. In other words, we want to have moral fear towards, well, let's say, doing something unskillful, let's say breaking the precepts. And then there is also knowing, there is also repercussions, what we call results. What are the results of doing something? The consequences of doing something. That's called otapa when we talk about the consequences. So we can make that distinction between the two mental states here and otapa. Buddha talked about them as loka dhamma, lokia dhamma, something that protects the dhamma. Protects the world. What protects the world? There are two mental states. Otherwise, the world will be in trouble. Be trouble. So to make a distinction between the two mental states is like if you have a stick like this, on one side it's dirty and on one side is hot. So not wanting to touch the dirty part will be hiri. Yeah, shame, yeah, moral shame, because you're going to get dirty and people will look at you. Why did you touch that thing? You don't see you're dirty. So in other words, yourself, you really don't want to touch something because you get dirty. That would be hiri. But on one side, if it's like hot, you don't want to touch the hot thing. This is not about hiri, it's more otapa. In other words, what are the consequences? When you get burnt, you are going to you suffer. And also, those are the results. You're going to suffer, and others are going to suffer. They have to take you to the hospital, they have to pay money, they have to treat you. So in other words, it's going to lead to the suffering of oneself, others, and both. So we say that if you have that kind of moral dread, that will be otapa. So, and the Buddha really encouraged people to practice those two mental states. Yes, so now we can make a distinction which is a wholesome state of mind. Wholesome state of mind is that having that moral fear and moral dread. The other kind of fear that I'm going to talk about, that we are afraid of this and that. So this is really very, very important to meet that kind of fear with mindfulness and wisdom, so that we can even transform that fear into a positive energy, into courage, in other words. So now let's go to the causes of fear. We have seen what fear is. Let's go to the causes of fear. We can see, at least in this talk, three kinds of causes. One of them is really is what the Buddha talked about. The cause of fear is craving. And we see that in the Dhammapada. There are about 5 phrases from Dhammapada where the Buddha say, from craving, from endearment, from passion, from basically greed, he mentioned so many kinds of states of mind which are similar actually, but like endearment, craving, passion, all those are the same. The Buddha is saying that this is where fear comes from. And in that Dhammapada phrase, the Buddha is saying, where there is no craving, where there is no endearment, where there is fear. So in other words, you can trace all kinds of emotions, or such as fear, in this case, to really craving. That's what we have in the scripture. But apart from the scriptures, also we have large bodies of knowledge, like for instance, in neuroscience. In neuroscience, they really trace the fear that normally we have is 500, I think, so many years ago, I don't remember exactly, over maybe 10,000 years ago, they talk about how we used to live with animals. Just like in Africa, when you go to the national parks, I've ever been to a national park where actually the animals are the one who have a lot of power. For us, we are just small in a zoo. We human beings, when you go to the national park, we are the one in a zoo. So the animals are just looking around all the time. So now, in this kind of environment where we lived so many times in the wild with animals, so we developed a lot of fear, like fear of being eaten by lions and leopards and all tigers. So now we don't live that way at this moment, but the brain has actually adapted. In other words, it still have that kind of fear that we used to have long time ago when we were worried about being eaten by our fellow friends like lions and so on. So the net effect at the present time, this is from neuroscience. You can even read about it from the Buddha's Brain. The book is called Buddha's Brain by Rick Hanson. He said that the net effect that even we are now safe, but the brain hasn't changed a lot. We still feel safe. There's no lion, but we go to somewhere on the beach and everything's fine. But we think about, okay, is my car going to be stolen? What's happening? Did I switch off the stove from my house? What is happening to my husband? Oh, is it going to? So we really kind of, it talks about the default of the mind is always in negative sense now. We always think about something negative. We are afraid of this and that, So this is from neuroscience. And of course, we can now also draw from another example. Thich Nhat Hanh gave this example, is at the time of birth. This is more recent. Don't talk about even 1,000 years ago when we lived in the forest. This is when we are traveling from our mother's womb. That journey, that odyssey, it's a very long one. We used to live in a very, very good environment. Food was coming on demand, just directly, then we lived in, there's no light there. It's just about the right warmth, inside our mother's womb. Now we make that journey when we are born that day. We come out all of a sudden in a world whereby we see strangers. The first thing is strangers, the doctor, the first stranger, the nurse or what. So, I mean, can you imagine seeing you have not been seeing any stranger there, and all of a sudden you come out, you say person you don't know. It is very fearful. You should be very fearful, Can you imagine you people, you have Facebook, and all those people come in front of you today, in front of you, though you have Facebook, I'm telling you, you'll not be willing to face them. They will just show up in one day, and you're adults. But what about a child? For the first time they come in this world and they say stranger, so they become afraid, So now this is about the stranger. What about the light? The baby there in the womb is not used to that light, very intense light. You all again are afraid, being afraid, So for me, this is, as an adult, sometimes I switch off my light in my bedroom. And now, all of a sudden, when somebody come and switch on light, I get so scared. I mean, there's a lot of fear of too much light, when you're in the middle of the night, and I don't know whether this happened to you. All of a sudden, you see bright light in the middle of the night and wondering who's really switching on the light, So we're afraid of bright light. And now you look at the baby, they touch, they have to be touched, they have to get food in a different way, This time the mother has to give the feeding. Before it was not, they didn't have to ask before. Before the food was just coming directly on demand, But now they have to cry like this in order to get the attention of the mother. So in other words, there's always fear. The child is afraid whether they're going to get the food or what. So according to Thich Nhat Hanh, he thinks that also we develop fear that way. At the time of birth, fear also came. But at any rate, the amount of fear we have, irrespective of whether it's coming from birth or from neuroscience a long time ago, whether it's come from craving, our task is to be mindful of it and to have some kind of wisdom in order to deal with. So that's by way of the cause of fear. We have seen the kinds of fear. Now we know the cause. That's the second noble truth already we know. Now the third noble truth on that would be fearless. To have fearless, that's the solution. To be fearless and abaya, that's the result of our practice. So we have to go now to the fourth noble truth, the way out of this fear. We have to follow the teaching of the Buddha. We are not going to pull out other resources. We need to follow the Buddha's teaching. Two discourses are going to help us in this case. One is the Noble Eightfold Path. Another one is Vitakka Santana Sutta, remove of destructive thoughts. Because really, when you look at it, the thought comes, and you're afraid. And I don't know if you have read a story about somebody who really painted tigers. Somebody was a good painter, day one, day two, and 1 month he was painting tigers in a cave. And now this is something he started because he was a good artist, was painting tigers. And now one day he took a walk, and then he came when it's dark. Going back to his cave, there was not enough light, and he was so scared. The painting he really had painted very well, thought it was a tiger and ran away. So we are painting a lot of tigers in our life. So, and later on we run away from our own paintings. And for me, I'm not a painter, but I saw this recently. And actually many years ago, I was in the United States. I was in the United States staying in a kuti, a room or houses for monks, we call them kutis. So I had a day off. And at our monastery, we used to have a day off and go meditate. Now, when I was meditating, I decided to put a chair. Usually I don't put a chair to prop the door, but I did so. I put a chair to prop my door so that I can get fresh light, fresh air in my room. And I meditated until evening. But in evening, I said, okay, let me go and get some hot water from the main hall. So then normally in my kuti, around my kuti, we have deers. Deers, they come around our kutis. And this time, I've seen deers during that time, and they usually come even sit under my kuti, because it was raised up. Then I was actually going to close the door. Every time I was trying to close the door, it was not shutting. I said, maybe the deer is just propping my door. Maybe the deer is on my door. So then I kept on bringing the door, but it was stuck, and it was dark. I said, what's stopping the door from closing? And later on, I remembered, oh, I'm the one who put the chair there. So now I'm afraid of now a deer, which is really, I feel that I'm hurting it because it's not shutting, but forget that I'm the one who is creating all this, So then I see most of the fear that it's coming from our own creation. So we need to then to understand it. So that's why we're going to use some ways on how to meet fear with the mindfulness and understanding. Wisdom, we can say wisdom. So we start with right understanding, which is part of the Noble Eightfold Path. So really, when we understand fear, then it's losing it loses grip. What's fear? You know, most people, they don't know what's in fear. Fear is just another mind state, is an emotion, you know. So we have to understand how it comes about. It comes due to unwise attention to the theme of danger. You know, we don't pay attention to the danger, and then we get hijacked, and then we're afraid of something that is going to be maybe harming us or is dangerous for us. So in other words, we need to understand it. The more we understand the fear, the more we can deal with it. But if we push it under the rug and we don't address it, and we call ourselves, oh, I'm afraid of this and that. By the way, there's also what you call phobia. Having phobia, fear of heights and all this kind of thing. But that's something that is perceived, right? Perceived. We perceive that we are in danger, and then we have this kind of phobia. It's called claustrophobia and agoraphobia and all these kind of phobias. So that can be distinguished from, I think, the fear we're talking about, but still you can deal with it in the same way. So understanding then is very important. Understanding is very important, and understand that is unwholesome. That's the first kind of understanding, that, okay, fear is actually unwholesome. And then the root of it is, I told you, craving. So by knowing those two things, that fear belongs to unwholesome side of the mind, and also knowing the cause, already you are really addressing fear actually with understanding and wisdom. That's what we call right understanding in the Buddha's teaching, part of the first Noble Truth. The second part of the Noble Eightfold Path is thoughts, right thoughts. So we need to have thoughts of non-fear. What are the thoughts of non-fear? Is courage. So in the Noble Eightfold Path, the second part is called right thought of non-greed, which is generosity, thought of non-hatred, which is metta loving kindness, thought of non-cruelty, which is compassion. So in this case, because most of the time when fear arises, we have a thought of aversion. So in other words, the more we cultivate the thought, the opposite of that, which is loving kindness and of course compassion, so then we'll have more courage. Well, I give you an example, and of course, you know the benefits of metta loving kindness. One of the benefits of loving kindness is to you overcome the three poisons, which is greed, hatred, and delusion. So the more you cultivate loving kindness, you overcome that poison. But fear is a cousin to those mental states. I told you the cause of fear is craving. Yes. So the more we cultivate loving kindness, the thought of loving kindness, the more you cultivate the thought of compassion, the more you cultivate the thoughts of letting go, the more we really weaken our fears. One time I was in Thailand, I remember when I wanted to see ghosts, they took me and I was in the middle of the forest. And then when the fear arises of ghosts, I would send loving kindness. May I be well, happy and peaceful. May all beings be well, happy and peaceful. So with the cultivation of that thought of loving kindness, it undermines anger, fear, and aversion. And that's really where fear comes from, because when you look at the root of fear is craving to get, also craving to get rid of. So whenever we have fear, we are craving to get rid of something. We have aversion, we have this kind of mind states. So you can see how I said that can help also right thoughts. Okay, now we go to right speech. So the more we cultivate right speech, that means speak the truth, speak with kindness, we speak in a kind of harmonious way, we speak what's meaningful, then we remove our fear, because most of the time fear comes when we are afraid, when we talk what follows, then we talk harshly, and then we wonder, oh, what's happening when people really listen to us, and that it will be harsh, or then you're afraid, or once they find the lies that I've been talking, then there's fear that arises there. But if your speech is properly, you shouldn't be afraid to meet other people, because you know that you're clean, you know, you're clear. So right speech can help in the Noble Eightfold Path. So now we go to right action. Right action is, of course, we have to abstain from killing, abstain from taking what's not given, abstain from sexual misconduct. So when you look at this cultivation of these thoughts, these actions, which is the opposite of that, let's say the opposite of taking what's not given is to be generous. The opposite of not killing is to have loving kindness and compassion towards things. So then when you have right actions, then fear is going to be less and less. You don't have to be afraid. And even other beings don't have to be afraid around you, because you're not killing them and you're not killing, they're not really, bothered of your presence. But imagine if you are around somebody who's killing and who's taking and stealing things. So then you have fear, you know, you have fear around these people. And even you yourself who's doing that, you always have fear that, okay, they'll catch me. If I take these things, they'll catch me at one time or the other. So then you can see the practice of right action also helps to overcome fear. And then we can go to the next one, which is right livelihood. So the way you live your livelihood, if it's in sync with the right understanding, right thoughts, right action, right speech, and really the way you live your life, it can really lead freedom from fear. So that's by way of right livelihood. Then we can talk about right effort. The more we cultivate the right effort to overcome unskillful threats, and of course you prevent and overcome them. In this case, you need to overcome fear and prevent it, and also cultivate the opposite, which is developing and maintaining this effort to be fearless. But let's talk more about how to overcome fear using part of the effort, right effort. So here we have to look at the Vitakka Santana Sutta. We find it in Majjhima Nikaya, where the Buddha talks about 5 ways of dealing with obsessive thoughts or destructive thoughts. In this discourse, the Buddha talks about the first way is to actually replace the opposite. Now, when you look at fear, the opposite of fear is courage. So in replacement method there, then we need to replace fear with courage. So you need to read that sutta. Actually, it's a lengthy sutta, but I'm summarizing it here by really reminding you about the 5 methods there as part of right effort to overcome when fear is present. You can overcome it that way by replacement. Then the second method is reflection. You reflect on the presence of fear. Okay, now when fear has arisen, then you reflect, oh, if I'm fearful, I fear to go outside to do this and this and this. When the fear comes, reflect on the danger that, okay, this fear is dangerous, is going to really rob me of my peace of mind. So you reflect on how fear leads to suffering. Actually, when you have a fear, you suffer. So you reflect on the suffering, on the danger of fear. You reflect on the defilement of the fear. It means that the more you're afraid, the more the mind gets defiled. So if let's say you're having 10% fear, and the more you give in fear, and you don't really meet it with mindfulness understanding, the more the next time it comes, it'll be even more stronger. That's more by way of defilement. So it defiles the mind more and more and more. So then we look at also degradation. So it degrades the mind. When people see that you're already afraid of this and this and that, and they cannot really handle your fears, then people will take you into low grade. You cannot handle the emotion. You don't have emotion intelligence to really perceive and understand the emotion and deal with it. So this is a second method there, which is called reflecting on the danger, on the defilements, on the degradation of that emotion of fear. Then the third method there is actually redirecting your mind. You redirect your mind when there's a lot of fear. You need to redirect your mind to something wholesome. What does that mean? Let's say fears are rising. You can redirect your mind to recite metta loving kindness. Those who know the sutta, you can say, so in other words, you really reflect on the discourse of metta loving kindness. You can actually come back to the breath. You can be aware of different parts of the body and become mindful of the body itself. So that also helps redirect your mind. This redirection of the mind is, I think, very important. Sometimes when we are talking to somebody, yeah, Sophia, and let's talk. And then somebody come and say, Sin comes and say, oh, can I talk to Bhante? No. Leave me, I still have a talk with Sophia. And then Sin will insist, no, I'm going somewhere, please. I want to talk to you for 1 minute only. But we've been talking with Sophia for about 20 minutes. And then when I say, okay, Sophia, wait a bit, let me talk to Sin. So 1 minute only talking to Sin, and then Sin will go. Then I'll come back to Sophia. Then when I come back to Sophia, I say, by the way, what have we been talking about? I've lost my train of thought. What's going on here? Then Sophia will say, oh, I also forgot. And I will say, oh, forget about it. I can't remember. So the same thing when you really redirect your mind from a difficult emotion like fear, then it will kind of lose the strength. Fear will lose strength because you are really turning your mind that way for a while, in other words. Then we go to another method there. It's called retracing it. It's called retracing. We retrace. Where does this fear coming from? We really trace where fear comes from. I've already told you, fear comes from craving. So when we know that it comes from craving, then we can retrace back and then find out the springboard, the root, in other words. Here we want to find the root, the nourishing root for fear. And lastly, it's called resolution, to make a strong resolve in life, not fear, so that fear doesn't really lead you. You want to really make sure that fear is not your master and your puppet. No. You want to really use all the efforts and wisdom to really overcome this fear. In the Pali word, it's called aditana, to make a strong determination so that fear doesn't become your master. So now we continue on with mindfulness. Because we finish the right effort, we go to right mindfulness. Right mindfulness, in this case, we try to make fear the object of our attention. We become aware of fear. When fear rises, we become mindful of fear. Fear, we make the object of our attention. So we know the presence of fear, then the absence of it. That's a discourse telling us to be mindful of the presence and absence of a particular emotion, right? That's part of right mindfulness. Now, the next thing we need to do as part of the mindfulness practice is do what we want to find out the causes and condition of fear. So I've told you the causes of and condition for fear, again, is paying attention to the theme of craving. Whenever there's craving, then we have fear. So, but further on mindfulness, it requires us to really, because we are embodied beings, and the body is biofeedback, we need to really pay attention to our body when fear arises. How do we feel physically? Do we feel tension and tightness in the body? Because whenever there's fear, there's some kind of tension that arises in our body and also in our mind. So we need to check that one. And we need also to really follow the discourse on mindfulness, where the Buddha gives instruction to start being mindful of the rising nature, the rising and passing away, that's called impermanence nature of the fear. We need to be mindful of the dukkha nature. This means unsatisfactory nature of fear. We need also to know the selfless nature of fear. So in these three characteristics of existence, we need to be mindful of them when fear is present. Because fear is not like something that happens all the time, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 5 days. No, it has a nature of changing. It rises and then it changes and then it passes away for a moment. Though we kind of try to remember the memories and we keep fear going on, but actually fear being a mind state, it's as a nature of rising and passing away. So we need to be mindful of that. Right? So then we finally, as part of the mindfulness exercise, we need to depersonalize this kind of fear. We need to depersonalize it. What does that mean? It means not taking fear to be I, mine, myself. In other words, we don't want to make fear as our property. We don't have copyrights of fear. Most people have copyrights. They say, oh, this is my fear. No, I'm afraid of this. I'm a person who is afraid of this and this and this. And so we make things we're afraid of in life. We don't know that actually it's not something that we can own. It's just a mind state, you know? So in other words, fear is not mine. you don't own fear. It just comes to and come and goes due to cause and condition. So fear is not mine, it's not myself, it's not I. In other words, we need to really and not cling on to that mind state. Because the more we cling on to that mind state as I, as mine and myself, this like actually creates some other emotions like conceit, thinking that fear is I, fear is mine, myself. Then there's conceit, there's even wrong views, there's the craving. When we say that fear is mine, that means you're craving, you know? So we need actually to overcome that. And what helps that is more of mindfulness. So now finally, we look at concentration, right? Concentration, the more we cultivate concentration, I mean, by really achieving that state of concentration, it presumes that we overcome 5 hindrances, like restlessness, sloth and torpor, then doubt, then we talk about aversion and the greed. So the more we overcome those states of mind, the more we actually gain the mind concentration. But though, of course, it's not mentioned fear as one of the 5 hindrances, but actually, when you look at it, fear belongs to aversion. So if the more we overcome these 5 hindrances and the mind gets some kind of stability, the more we can be free from this kind of emotion, fear. So we can see in the Noble Eightfold Path, we have what we call right understanding, which is part of wisdom, and also we have mindfulness. And all those 8 ways, of course, from the Noble Eightfold Path can overcome fear. So that's why fear, I mentioned about freedom from fear, and of course, using mindfulness and wisdom to meet it, the fear that we have. So I think that's enough for today in terms of my talk. And I would like to invite questions and comments and make this topic very interactive. And I can really underscore things that I mentioned very fast. But for me, I was heading for really a very juicy session whereby we interact and really share your experience about fear. I told you I was afraid of ghosts, and I had to use some of these methods. Yes, I was in Thailand. I was afraid of water actually to swim, but I had to face my fear. Actually, the best way to overcome fear is to face it, you know. That's one of the best ways. Okay, I think I'll say now, thank you very much for your attention. And let me hear from you, your discussion and question.
Thank you so much, Bhante Buddharakkita. I really appreciate always your Dharma talks, and I love the stories, and I love the Sutra reference. And in fact, Sophia has asked a question. If you could just spell the name of the Sutta, we could pop it into the chat, and then we could look that up and then share that with other people.
Okay, I'm going to write it. Sutta, Vitakka Santana Sutta. Vitakka Santana Vitakka Santana Sutta. Yes, Actually, let me check the numbers. Is in Majjhima Nikaya? Majjhima Nikaya.
No problem. While you're doing that, Bhante, I'll just posed a question to the group, and the question invites everyone just to look at our own dealings with fear. And if anyone would like to share, all you need to do is pop the answer into the chat, or you can unmute yourself. And the question that I'll pose for the group is, what are some difficulties that you have in dealing with fear? So it could be for yourself, it could be for your friend or someone that you know, any difficulties in dealing with fear. And then the answers that we come up with, Venerable, if you're okay, I will then ask those questions of you. And if you have any tips and advice, we would love to hear it.
Yeah. Okay.
Fantastic. Okay. Thank you. So for everyone, sorry.
I'll be typing as you're asking it. I'm going to write the English name, distracting fear, distracting thought.
Thank you.
Thought. Vitakka Santana Sutta. Okay, Vitakka Santana Sutta. Vitakka Santana Sutta. This is the Majjhima Nikaya. Okay. Then for the foundation of mindfulness, you know that. The four foundation of mindfulness. You know that the four foundation of mindfulness. The four foundation of mindfulness. That's where I drew from my talk. The four foundations of mindfulness. Mindfulness. Yeah, the sutta. Again is Majjhima Nikaya. Okay, great. So I've given the reference. Two suttas was the backbone of our talk today, discussion.
Thank you
I framed that. Yes.
That's really appreciated. Thank you. So people, if you want those references, they're in the chat right there. Thank you. So, Bhante, we've got some people who are answering that question that I had posed earlier. We'll give people a bit more time. Bhante, you were talking in your talk about the causes of fear, and you said that there were 3 of them. I just want to make sure that I've got them right. I understand the first one is craving. What were the other 2?
Okay, one I drew from the scripture themselves, so that always I wanted to be with the scripture. So that's we find in Dhammapada. Those one you can find the 5 phrases in the Dhammapada. You can Google Dhammapada, causes of fear, Dhammapada. So now the other causes, that one, they are not in the Dhammapada, but we can understand them. One of them, it comes from neuroscience. Neuroscience, from a book called Buddha's Brain, which I'm going to type here. Buddha's Brain. Yeah, Buddha's Brain. The Buddha's Brain. So it's a very good book, actually, by Rick Anson. Rick Anson. He's a neuroscience and a Dhamma teacher, actually. And he talks about how fear arose many years ago, many years ago, tens of thousands of years ago, when we didn't use in apartments. We used to live in a forest. In the forest, the constitution is very simple in a forest. You kill or you are killed. That's it. Forget about the constitution of Australia. There's a very simple constitution back then. You either you eat or you are eaten. That's it. So now what happened? When we lived there, we lived with monkeys. We lived with lions. The only thing we used to protect ourselves, we used to use fire only, fire. So because animals are afraid of fire, so they don't come anywhere near human being when there's fire. So, but then we had to collect the food. So now we have to leave fire. We cannot travel with fire everywhere. So we have to leave the place of the fire and go to collect firewood. We go to collect food. So by the time some of our members left and they got to collect firewood and food to bring to us to cook, we are so afraid whether those people will be eaten, they won't come back with firewood, or even them, they were afraid that by the time they go back, they won't find their other friends. So in other words, we develop this kind of mindset. Always watching out. Yeah. Is the land coming? Yeah. So there it's about either You either every time you have to like this, like
Yeah.
this, like this, looking out is there danger? Where's the danger coming from? Like this. In other words, you have to be super vigilant. So now, according to this neuroscience, they say that the brain has survived all these years. Is now during evolution. This brain is actually still in the same state of mind. The default state of the mind is negative. So it's always watching out for fear. Even when you are safe, there's still that kind of underlying current in our mental continuum where we are afraid of this and that. I mean, even things which are very little, trivial things, we get afraid, you know. So this is a cause that comes from neuroscience, where the neuroscience say that our brain, still the default state of our brain is fear, negativity, another one. So that was one cause I mentioned. Another cause of is more biological, from biology. The other one, neuroscience. From biology, we know we are born. We come from mother's womb, and then we make that odyssey, that trip that we make once in our life. And now during that trip, by the time we come out of our mother's womb, we reach, and then we are so afraid to come out because of lights, because of strangers, because of touches, because of this and that and that. Look at all our senses, you know, like our eyes, you know, can you imagine the first time to open the child open their eyes and see the light? What about the sound? I'm telling you, it's too loud. They're down there, and the mother's womb is not loud, you know. It's all shielded from light or sound. But this time you hear all the sirens and all this. So this become afraid of hearing. We become afraid of seeing. We become afraid of even. Can you imagine the first breath we take?
Yeah.
First breath we take. So that can be very fearful, to make sure that you breathe the proper breath. Then the touch and all this. So that's more of a biological basis of fear. And this fear, by the way, we may not be craving. We may meet good yogis who meditate, mindful. We have loving kindness. We are at Metta Center. We are full of metta, because life is better with metta. So we all good meditators. But the thing is, we may not escape quickly from the neuroscience basis and biological basis of our fear. So that's what I was talking about.
Yeah, I understand.
So we need mindfulness. We need mindfulness and wisdom to meet this kind of fear.
Thank you.
Is it clear now?
It is. Thank you so much, Bhante. So we've got some responses. So what I would like to do now is the question that I had posed to everyone is, what are some difficulties that you may have in dealing with fear? So Venerable, what I'll do is I'll read out each person's answer and see if we can help with any advice to them. Okay, we've got about half an hour for this session, and if anything else comes up, the participants are welcome to pop it into the chat as well. So the first one comes from Elise. She talks about how fear hijacks our mind before we even realize it. And often we go straight into avoidance of things that we're that we're fearing. So that's probably where, Venerable, you were talking earlier about aversion and us wanting to be away from the things that we're afraid of. Any advice about that?
Okay, let me see. Sometimes the fear arises along after the accidents. Why do we think that? Why do you think that is? Yeah, because you know, somebody said sometimes the fear arises long after the traumatic accidents. It's because traumatic accidents, when they happen, there's a lot to handle, you know. Of course, there are also there's a lot of fear, but later on it can come because of memory, you know. In fact, this also goes to neuroscience. You know, when we fall into ditches, this goes to the brain actually, how the brain works. Now we need to know how the brain works. The brain, the way it works, it kind of have a graphic memory of the danger that it is going through. So because the brain is interested in survival, the genes and all the things. So in other words, when there's a very traumatic experience or a negative experience, it better takes all the details. Why? So that it doesn't repeat the same thing. Right? So in other words, if you're walking, I'm just going to pick an African example. When you're walking and one time you see a lion, it becomes very traumatic. So next time when you come, even if the lion is not there, but as soon as you see grass going like this, you think it's a lion, so that you don't repeat the same thing. Then when it's a positive experience, this is very interesting. If we are going through a positive experience, then the brain doesn't take the graphics of it, because it doesn't have to worry about surviving, right? So the brain is just interested in surviving. So that means when we have a traumatic accident, why do we later on, again, we are afraid, is because the brain has recorded it graphically, so that even a simple imagination of the same thing, then it's afraid. In other words, we start getting afraid of the memory of it. This is the memory being imprinted in your brain, so that it's replayed that, okay, and avoid danger. Like last time you had danger, now you better avoid danger. So in summary, according to that brain, Buddha's brain, the neuroscience talk about when it comes to negative experience, the brain is like what you call negative experience is like a Velcro. You know Velcro? Velcro sticks. It sticks. So Velcro, when it comes to negative experience, it really doesn't forget. It sticks like this. We stick to the negative experience, and we don't forget it. But when it comes to the positive experience, it's like Teflon. Teflon just slides. So no wonder you do 100 good things, people don't remember them. Don't remember them. You give tea to Sin, you invite him to Uganda, but then you do one thing, only one negative thing. You visit Sin and you don't take trash out of his house, and he had counted on you, and then Sin, only one thing out of 100. Because it's like a Teflon. I mean, what you call Velcro. This person really, how can do this to me? Only one thing. So in other words, we have seen this happening in our life. When you can do 100 things, but you do one wrong thing, people forget all the good things you have ever done. It just get erased, the memory completely erased. So in other words, why you get fear arises along after rather a traumatic thing is because you are averse. You don't want to repeat the same thing. That's why fear arises. So let us continue with the question. Also, even when I try to observe it mindfully and distance myself from it, sometimes it seems to be lingering in the background, which causes some uneasiness and anxiety. What should we do to deal with this? I try to send metta to myself. No, you see, that's why metta is not enough. Metta is not enough. I've given you all the toolbox. You need to use the Noble Eightfold Path. You use understanding is very, very important. Distancing is not enough. The thing, when you say, when I try to observe it with mindfulness, you should observe it with what you call right mindfulness. Even mindfulness is not enough. Mindfulness is just observing. Right mindfulness is need to take into all other factors. Right understanding, right thought, right effort, right this and that, and even other things. But when you say, okay, and distance myself from it, you should not distance yourself from it. There's a method there, which I gave, is called redirecting your mind, because distancing yourself is more aversion towards it. But the word I use in part of the word that I want to use instead of distancing yourself, I use the word redirecting your mind. Okay, you leave it there, the fear there, and then you redirect your mind to something else. The Pali word the Buddha uses is called asati manasikara. I don't want even to use that word, though that's what the Buddha gave. The direct translation of this is don't pay attention to it. In Vitakka Santana Sutta, the Buddha talks about forgetting it. In other words, don't pay attention to it. But for me, I'm using the word redirecting your mind to something wholesome. In other words, it's not about distancing. It's about really taking a break. taking a break and now continue to be with something wholesome. Yeah, but distancing means, okay, you are really pushing it away and you don't want to face it. But distancing for me, it means that you are ignoring it, and ignoring it is not going to solve the problem, you know. But taking a really a positive stance, whereby actually you say, okay, there's that traumatic experience. Instead of saying, I don't want to face it or I want to distance myself, I say, let me focus something more positive in my life. Maybe something, whatever it is. And then you can always come back to it. So I would really disguise the word distancing there myself from it. Sometimes it seems to be lingering. Yes, you know, healing from trauma, it's a process. It will still linger as long as the memories about it. But you know that the more you practice mindfulness, right mindfulness and the Noble Eightfold Path, is the more you weaken that kind of memory, you know. So in other words, this is a switch. This is not a switch on and off. Okay, let me now switch off. Now, no. Traumatic experience come along in many ways and very complex. Some of them even needs further kind of other approaches, like even probably do some yoga, do some exercise. Many other things will be needed even beyond the Noble Eightfold Path, basically. So basically, if it lingers in the mind, just don't freak out. Just know that it's a process. It's a healing process. Yeah, so which causes some uneasiness and anxiety. Anxiety, again, is another fear from future. That's form of fear of the future, you know. So they definitely, it will cause some kind of anxiety. Then the question, what should I do to deal with this thing? I try to send metta myself. I told you the answer is that metta is only one of the Noble Eightfold Path. Try to practice the whole Noble Eightfold Path. That's the answer. My feedback to that. Metta is part of right thought, is one of the Noble Eightfold Path. You need to use other paths also and other healing modalities, taking care of yourself, go for a walk, have kind of people around you. That's called social connections. So many things, my friend. So that's what I can say. How to deal with this kind of thing. Because if you have lingering mind, you're gonna have share with the lucky people, have friends, and have good time, basically. Yeah, not thinking about the incidents. That can also be part of the healing, you know. Yeah, so it's not fixing things. Okay, now I've met her. Yeah, now it's better. No. Yes, it's good, but that's a healing more. It's a process. Thank you very much. I think for what I can say to share this.
Thanks so much, Venerable. So that was Sin's question. Venerable, just above that, there is a question from Gabe. What the question is from Gabe is, when it has to do with physical health, an example, if you have to do a medical test, that can have some risks. So that's his.
Oh, sorry, can you pause a bit?
Yes.
I want to power up my computer. Yeah,
Sure.
Because I've taken this laptop and it's low on power. Let me just actually
okay,
power
no problem.
it up.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm just putting heat here to power up. All right. Yes, I'm powering up. I'm powering it. I'm in Tanzania here, and yeah, I want to put power. Okay, power codes. All right. Okay, now it's powered up.
Okay, so
All right. Sorry about that.
That's okay, no problem. So, Venerable,
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see in the chat. So you jumped to the last question, which was Sin's question. But just above Sin's question, there's about 5 other comments / questions for you. I don't know. I don't mind which one you want to start.
I see from Gabe.
Yeah, there is
I
one
see
from
Gabe.
Gabe. Yeah.
Okay. When it has to do with physical health, and for example, if you have to do a medical test, that can have some risks. Yes, definitely, it can have some risks. So then we are afraid, and then what we do, we go for the medical, we understand what the risks, we decide whether we're gonna take a risk or not. So this is part of the Noble Eightfold Path, suffering. We know that the medical, even in surgery, we may survive or not, but we have to look at the medical test. They will tell you these are the risks, this is something that's going to pose a danger to your health. Do we do it or not? Then you have to decide. So in life, we have to decide. Sometimes we may take a risk and then for the betterment. Sometimes we take a risk and then we don't recover. So then it becomes a very, a very tough call, you know. So the key is to minimize the risks and choose, discern and use wisdom so that you minimize the risks. Not to take risks which are not well processed, like without discernment. For me also to happen where I have something and then I meet the doctor and told me, okay, you know, I'm not going to do surgery. This can be healed by taking medicine. Then I just say, okay, fine, I'll just take medicine. And then he warns me, you know, when you take medicine, this might take ages. It will take a long time. I say, yes, I'm willing to take a long time, but I'm not going to take the risk of surgery. So this is something that we have to really decide for ourselves. It's our health. And then the question is, let me see if there's a question after that, because I don't see the question. It's just more of a statement. When it has to do with physical health, and for example, if you have to do a medical, that can have some risk. Well, this life, the Buddha mentioned exactly, we are in samsara. So everything we're taking is more of a risk, actually. Even breathing, actually. We breathe in, we breathe in. I'm telling you, when we breathe out, we don't know when we're going to breathe again. So we are taking a risk. I mean, there's no guarantee. Who has a guarantee when you breathe in? Who told you that when you breathe in, you breathe out? And in any case, when to come to death, it will be one of them. Either you breathe in and you don't breathe out, or you breathe out and you don't breathe in. So there's no guarantee. In other words, I mean, who takes flights? When you got airplane, you leave your business, you leave your husband and wife and relative, you get into that flying coffin. What are you doing? It's risk. So in other words, when we're about to land, you know, so okay, in an unlikely event that when they talk so nice that it's an unlikely event that the plane has to land on they don't say no anytime it's crashing. No. They say in unlikely event, then the oxygen drops. You put in a mask. Good luck, whether you have time to think about that. So then they talk about in unlikely event. They use these euphemistic terms, you know. They don't tell you, man, you're taking a risk. In other words, later on, I go to learn that all learning are emergence learning. All kind of learning. Once you take airplane, when they say, okay, it's time to come down and land, all those landing are called emergence learning. That's why they take back up and then do another. So life is a risk. So what I'm trying to say, just take it easy, have mindfulness and wisdom to understand the medical test, and you weigh the pros and cons and all this kind of thing, and then decide whether you want to take a risk or not. And that's, you have to face your fear. Life is like that. Sometimes we take, but it's not about not taking a risk or not. It's about, are you taking the risk with understanding and mindfulness and all that? That's what I'm trying to say. Because ultimately it's your life, you have to decide, but try to minimize as much risk as possible. That's what I can say. Okay, there's another question. When it has to do, oh no, I finished that one. The other one was ghosts. I don't see it.
Yes.
And I don't see the ghost thing. Okay. Tina and Bhante. I also have and had the fear of ghosts. But more than that, I think it's the partner of fear at first reaction that's most challenging to things unknown or scary. Yes. You see, I didn't go through all the categories of fear. There's the fear of fear, the fear of unknown, fear of, there's too much, many kinds of fear. Yes, the fear of death and the fear of ghosts, as you said, that is more fear of unknown, actually. Yeah, and that becomes scary because you don't know. But if you know that once you meet the ghost, it will say hello, it will take you for tea or what, so then there's no problem. It's like even death. If we know that after we pop off, we just end up with angels, they will give us a cup of tea and and we go and what's called that thing? Nutmeg, and have a breakfast with what's that Australian thing? Paste you put on the bread. Nutmeg? I don't know. Yeah. So anyway, if you know exactly what will happen, then there will be no problem. So the question is, Tina and Bhante, I also have and had the fear of ghosts. Okay. But more than that, I think it's the pattern of fear at first reaction, that the most challenging. Yes, definitely, it's the first reaction, actually. Yes, so the fear of the first reaction when you see the ghost is what we are afraid of, exactly, because we don't know what's the imagination. And actually, even I can extend to the fear of death. It's that first thing when you think you're going, but once you're gone, you're done, that's no problem. But it's how you're going. How you're going. The whole idea of taking one breath and it doesn't come back, that really makes us afraid, But once it's done, it's just it's normal. It's part of, I think it's quite normal, basically. It's just only that instance where I really, I think I can really make it this way. Let's put it this way. Public speaking. When you go to speak in the public, you will think that you are going to be afraid the entire talk for 1 hour. No. We are mostly afraid at the first time we're going to say, good morning, this is Bhante, and that kind of our first few seconds, actually. And many times people have a nice kick of adrenaline. Either people, it makes them debilitated and they cannot even speak at all. I've seen people could not even speak at all. Then the first maybe few seconds, 1 minute or 2 minutes, then people are so much afraid. It's that initial reaction. Okay, how people are going to perceive me. Am I going to perceive me as somebody who don't know anything? And then they're going to judge me, that I'm going to give them a lot of garbage. So it's just initial fear, you're right. Yeah, so you're right in that case. So in other words, once you really overcome that, then there's no fear. So we have to take care of that in public speaking. How we take care of that is to start with the story, then we either have rapport with people, we make that initial connection so that you don't have that initial reaction. So yes, you're right. It's the reaction, the first reaction that's most challenging. Yes, definitely, you're right. Thank you so kindly for the talk of Freedom from Fear, Venerable. Very informative and most appreciative. Well, that's Michelle. Okay, irrational of fear itself, the consequences of doing wrong seem really big. Okay, now let's discuss this because I don't understand what's called. Richard, you said irrationality of the fear itself, the consequences of things going wrong seem really big. Yes, of course. Can you tell more about it, actually?
So Richard, you're just on mute if you wish to unmute yourself.
Irrationality, I need more meat to this. I need more explanation on what you want me to do.
He's unmuted himself.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So let's say I'm thinking about leaving my job, right? For example, and the consequences to me is kind of, I guess it's partially the fear of the unknown because, the lifestyle I've kind of lived with this job is what I've known, but I guess I'm fearful of what happens if I then leave that. But to me, I guess I want to know how you trace back the origin of the fear, because to me when I think about it without really understanding it, the consequences seem really big. So I'm like, I'm going to lose my job and lose my source of income. I'm going to lose my lifestyle. But then that kind of makes me fearful. But I kind of want to know how to overcome that, which I guess comes from understanding and then.
Right.
Yeah.
It comes from understanding, mindfulness, and really be in that moment when it comes and all this. But if you want to always even find out what's the source, what is the springboard, is you really, there's aversion toward that. Yeah, there's aversion behind that. That's the springboard. But when you look at the reflections more forward looking, but refreshing is more backward looking. What's behind all this kind of thing? Now, when you look at reflections more forward looking, you look at, wow, if I lose my job, then it's going to be very difficult to get another one and all this kind of thing. So in other words, all the tools that you have, I've given you a toolbox from the Buddha's teaching to find out where can you really use it. One may not work, but actually both can work. A combination can work, whereby you really sit down and say, take a good look at fear, and you say, can I face it? It's just a mental state. Can I understand and where it's really coming from? You see, by the time you find out where it's coming from, then you at least you're weakening it. You may not go in one sweep, but at least you can work on this. And because this is something that the cause and conditions of fear. It comes slowly but slowly, building up. You remember the example I gave about painting the tiger? You slowly painting it. It starts from a simple thought, Once I lose my job, I may not have a square meal. And then again, once I lose my job, I may not go to ball. So it keeps on building. So even then overcoming it doesn't come in just one thought. Okay, fear is just another mental state, and then it goes out like this. No, it comes slowly by slowly with a combination of things that you really have to use using the Noble Eightfold Path. A good mixture of mindfulness and wisdom is a good start, Then probing into it and see how it affects your mind, how it affects your body, and then not identifying yourself with this emotion, because this is our emotional life. And we human beings, we really identify a lot with our emotional life. So this can I let go? Can I let go? Can I have courage to face it? So this is what I was really sharing today, actually. Look at the toolbox of so many tools.
That's good. Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Does that help, Richard? That does help, Richard?
Yeah, it helps a lot, actually. Yeah, got to understand it first. I'm not going to solve it in one go. Be courageous enough to look into it. And then apply the 8 Noble Truths, and then okay, great, thank you.
Definitely. Okay, you're welcome. And then I go to a list. Then it hijacks our mind before we even realize it. Yes, emotion hijack. We call that emotional hijack. Often we go straight into avoidance of the things we are fearing. Yes, you see. Let me tell you, we have developed this in our life. In general, when we look at friends, we talk about our life. Let us not even talk about mental states. Our life, human beings, if we don't know human beings, we put into category of strangers. If we know them very well, oh, these are our friends. And if they are those very friends that do something wrong, we avoid them. So in other words, we have enemies, we have strangers, and we have friends, don't we? We do it all the time. So we avoid our enemies, we reach out to our friends, and we ignore strangers. Am I right? So now we do the same mental states. So fear becomes our enemy. We try to avoid it all the time at all costs. And then, of course, other mind states, we welcome them. So now often it goes straight to avoidance. Okay, this is what we call defense mechanism in psychology. Defense mechanism. Defense mechanism, we use this defense mechanism in order to avoid any stress that comes. So, and that avoidance is one of them, suppression. We can, in a psychological term, call it suppression. We suppress it, we try to avoid it at all costs. Why? Is because it's going to bring us a lot of stress. So now we use, knowing that this is a mechanism, defense mechanism, we want to see for ourselves how, when fear comes, do we go on autopilot and avoid the situation? Or do we take time to understand it? So in other words, this is not only avoidance, we do ignoring it. Sometimes we ignore it, we avoid it, sometimes we indulge. But what we really need to do is to really try to understand it. So the true approach to this kind of issues, if you're always going straight to avoiding, and I'm not surprised because that's how the brain is developed, always to avoid an uncomfortable situation. And I told you from the time of neuroscience, we always try to avoid lions, and up to now we're doing the same thing. So the key is, again, the Noble Eightfold Path. When we start to develop curiosity, okay, now yesterday when I had this issue, I was avoiding it. So now let me not avoid it. Let me take some time to really open to it. And the good news is that mindfulness leads us to that age where we can open softly to our experiences. I give you an example. I used to be afraid of swimming in a lake because my cousin nearly drowned. So now I always avoided water bodies every time, whether it's a swimming pool, apart from a shower. I go in a shower, but lakes, oceans, and all that, I didn't want to go anywhere near that because every time I had a lot of fear that myself I will drown like my cousin. So now when I went to India to study, I said, no, let me face my fear. So I tried to avoid it first time, and then I said, no, I have to face my fear. But this facing of fear, I should put a caveat. It should be opening softly to those areas and using right mindfulness to open and wisdom. You have to open softly in areas where you avoid it many times. You have to open softly and see how much comfortable you are in opening up in these areas. So now I started going to the swimming pool, ask the coach start teaching me how to swim. You know, he taught me how to start floating, and as I started floating, I was no longer sinking. And then later on, I became even a scuba dive instructor. I was aspiring to come to the Great Barrier Reef to dive there. You know, so in other words, you can always overcome our fears if we allow it open softly. But I'm a person who used to avoid diving. So you know that avoiding is not going to help us, though it's often is our habit, as you say, often we go straight into avoidance of things that we are fearing. You should understand from now, why would you avoid things you are fearing, and why do you do it straight away? It's because you don't have enough mindfulness and wisdom to hold it. That's why you go into autopilot. Straight away, you go into autopilot. Yes, this is our defense mechanism. Have you heard about fear, fight, or freeze? That's where we go. You either fight, or flight, or freeze. So this is the way we deal with the uncomfortable situation. So that's the reason. So now, but we don't have to be that way. We can use the Buddha's teaching on mindfulness and understanding and wisdom to really not be on autopilot. We can always face our fears. Yes. Does that help?
Yeah, that was helpful. Thanks, Bhante.
Thank you so much, Bhante. I note the time, but we just have one quick question right at the end, and this is from Richard. And his question is at the end, when it starts with, how do you trace fears back to their origin? Can you give an example of the techniques you used?
Richard, it talks about irrational fear and how to trace to origin. This requires a little bit of theoretical understanding of mind states, and I would invite you to study more of them. And that's how you should do more, be able to, you should be able to face them, to trace them for origin if you have a theoretical understanding. So, but if you don't have some kind of study background or theoretical understanding, you yourself, you ask yourself, okay, I'm afraid. What what's the underlying cause? Why am I afraid? You ask yourself. You don't have to go to the university and understand psychology of the mind. If you do, that's better. But I'm telling you, this is something that you can do with mindfulness and wisdom. You ask yourself, I'm now afraid of this. What should be the behind all this? What are behind my fear about losing my job, about this, facing my boss, and all. You'll find out the immediate cause of fear is aversion, anger, all this kind of thing. You want to push away things. After that, you find out the desire. Desire is bipolar, two things in desire. Desire to get something, and you're afraid whether you're going to get it or not. And now there's so desire to get rid of. So you might find out that really behind all that fear, you want to get rid of certain situation that you're not comfortable with. And then you can even go a little bit further than that. Why do you desire either to get or desire to push away things? Is because of maybe ignorance. You're ignoring certain things, or you are deluded, basically. So I think then why you ask yourself, why are you deluded? Because you don't have full understanding of the whole situation. That's why you fear. Then maybe you're paying anyone's attention. So we cannot go too much into going back. We just have to know the immediate causes, basically, in order to really loosen the energy of fear. Because we cannot really, this is not an intellectual exercise, by the way. Let us talk about it. It's not an intellectual exercise where we start really stressing everything and the ancestry of all this fear. No. If we can really get some idea that, okay, fear is a mental state, which is a mind state that really caused by immediately anger, we can say. In other words, you are trying to push out the present danger. That you understand it. And you really look at every time when there's fear, you have aversion towards something. Either it's interview or either what, but there's aversion toward that. And even if I don't tell you now that there's aversion behind your fear, you can tell exactly when the fear arises, whether your fear, the cat run away, to run over you, is you're afraid. There is a fear, then there's aversion. We call it aversion towards that experience. Then when you look at why are you having aversion towards the thing, then there's desire to push away that experience. So that's what we call craving, or we can call whatever, greed or desire, whatever. So then you know that behind aversion, there's always greed or desire to push away things or to get what you are. And behind desire is ignorance. That's enough retracing than an intellectual exercise is trying to find out other things. At least 3 areas, if you can go back to them, the fear, it will lose grip because mind can take one object at a time. You work with the psychology of the mind can take one object at a time. If you can actually sidestep the energy of fear that really takes a big toll on our life and try to go behind it, what's behind it, then you go again behind, then fear will lose grip. It may not go away, but it may lose a grip on your mind. So then later on, once you really find a springboard, then you are more mindful towards it than being hijacked with fear. Because fear can get caught up in us, and we get caught up in the fear, and then we cannot release ourselves. But by going slowly to know what's behind it, it kind of disentangle ourselves. It's a disentangling thing, and it's a healing process in that case.
Thank you.
Okay, let's put this way. Yeah, let's put this way. It's like when you I don't know whether you walked before and you hit your toe, you hit your foot and then start bleeding. You can do things. You can start walking. You can continue walking, or you can look backwards. And so why? You found out, you start even going backwards and find what hit your foot. Once you find out it's a stone, then you remove it. You know that, okay, I'm going to deal with this wound because it is a stone that hit me. It's not like a piece of iron, which is rusty, that's going to cause to be septic. So once you really find a nourishing root, then it's easier to deal with it. But if you're there in unknown, you don't know whether it was a stone, don't know what. Yeah, but then also this helps you that next time when you walk, you know that you removed it. So you walk without fear. Next time when you're walking in the same path, you know that, yes, last time I knocked myself, and I found out it was a stone, and I removed it, and now I'm walking more freely. You don't have those memories of fear again to knock yourself. So that's why it's very, very important to know the nourishing root, actually.
Thank you.
Are we together, Richard?
Sorry?
Are we together? You got it?
Yeah, I got it.
You
Yeah, that's
got it?
really helpful. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes, Gabe. How are you doing, Gabe? I see many people here. I'm so happy to see you. Last time I was in Australia, it has been quite a while. Well, I see here Eugene, Benjamin, Elise. Well, we have a few people here. Anyway, I'm looking forward to being in Australia sometime. And last time I was at Meta, I had good memories of Meta. Yes, yeah, I have good memories of Sydney actually last time. Sydney, where are you? It's gone? Okay, good. Thank you very much. Yeah, sorry, yesterday I was too early. This time I was a little bit late. That reminds me, African stretchable time. You see, this time I left my hotel in Tanzania where I'm staying, and I went to a place that they promised me that they will have internet for me. When I went there, they said, no, we can give you hotspot. I said, oh no, I cannot give a talk on hotspots. You see, these people are very kind. I told them, okay, I'm going to go with you, and we are going to this center. And then I went with them. They told me they are going to give my internet where we are going after my lunch at 12. And then I told them, are you sure? They said, yes, we're going to give you internet. No need to stay. So I went with them. So around 10 minutes before 12, I asked them, are you sure you're going to give me internet? Yes, we're going to give you hotspot. Hotspot? Giving a Zoom talk on a hotspot? No. So when I told them goodbye, and get me out of here, and then I had to come back here. So I lost about 15 minutes. Sorry about that, but yeah, I'm sure we caught up this thing, because in Uganda this will not happen, because I'm here for a meeting for about 4 days in Tanzania. And yeah, but in Uganda, if I'm in my monastery, this will not happen. But this time, I'm telling you, I mean, they're very, very kind to give me a hotspot to give a talk, but I said, no, it's not going to work. Let me go back to my hotel. And this, I came back to my hotel here, and I'm able to give a talk. Thank you very much for your patience.
I told
Thank you,
Tina,
Bhante.
I told Tina yesterday about the wrong time, and Tina said, "Oh, Bhante is very keen."
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. When you are doing something that you want to do, you're really looking forward to talk to your friends, Tina, Sinsin. I've been very much looking forward to this. And then I say, wow, I came too early. You're right, Sinsin. Way too early. Yes. Anyway, it has been a joy to see you and talk to you and really share this topic. It's a very topic in our life. Yes, fear of COVID, this and that. So I think that the tools we have will help us to really be free.
Thank you so much, Bhante. That was really amazing. And thank you for taking the time out, even though you are in between different places, to really meet with us. And it's always such a joy to have you at the Meta Centre. So thank you again so much for making the time and sharing your wisdom with us.
You're welcome.
And thank you to all of the participants, all of your questions and comments. I really appreciate these group sessions. It allows all of us to share that Dharma friendship with each one of us, and also to practice the Dharma in our daily lives. I'm just going to hand over to Sophia now, and she can do some short announcements.
Right.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you so much, Bhante, for sharing these very practical tools that we can use in our everyday life. And it's not one tool or two tools, there's the whole path, which is awesome. I'm definitely looking forward to using that, from my back, just pick it out from my back pocket at some point. Yeah, again, thank you everyone for your contributions. We couldn't have this session without your awesome questions too. So hope everyone's learned something and have things to take back in their lives. to further your practice. A bit of announcements. We have next Saturday, 9th of July, Karen will be running a workshop, the Mindful Dinosaurs, a workshop for preschool children and their caregivers at Meta Center. It will be 1:30 to 2:30. So we'd love to see you there. And we're also starting to run sessions in person. So it will be a hybrid model from now on. So if you're in Sydney, we'd love to see you in person. There you go. Tina's giving you a little sneak peek of what the center looks like. It got flowers and projector, the whole deal. So we'd love to see you. Yeah, that's all. Thank you so much, Tina, for your question as well. That kind of inspired all of our discussion afterwards. Bhante, do you usually end meetings with the dedication of merits or metta or any form just to close out our meeting?
Yes. Actually, just to open it because I don't close it. It's open. I open it with the blessing. Okay, yeah. I will do that in Thai language. Okay.
Sounds wonderful.
Yes, because this Dhamma doesn't end. This Dhamma ends. Every time we are reopening, re-beginning. It's a new beginning. It's not like other meeting, like psychology meeting, and we close, and next time we start. So now here we have all these tools. We revitalize our life to see how we can really lead our life, with free from fear, fearless. Okay, I'm going to chant a blessing. Sabityo vivajantu sabarogo vinasatu mante vavantantarayo sikidiga yuko baba. Abhivadana sirisani chavuda pachaino chattaro dhamma vantante ayuvanno sukambala bhavat sabba mangara rakkantu sabba devata sabba buddhanu bhavena sada soti bhavantu te bhavatu sabba mangara rakkantu sabba devata sabba dhammanu bhavena sada soti bhavantu te Bhavat sabba mangara rakkantu sabba devata sabba sanganu bhavena sadasoti bhavantu te akasata jabumatta devanaga maidika punyatam anmodita chiram rakkantu lokasasana chiram rakkantu desana chiram rakkantu mamparam Etavata chakamehi samparam punya samparam sabbe deva anumodantu sabbe buddha anumodantu sabbe satta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya imina punya kamena mame bala samagamo satam samagamo hotu yavani panapatya sadhu sadhu
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay, we have shared merits with all beings. May all beings, all merits that have accrued from listening to the Dhamma, giving the Dhamma and listen to Dhamma and all what you're doing to spread the Dhamma. All what you're doing, we have dedicated our merits to all beings. May all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful. That's in short what I shared the merit. And may you always be protected by the power of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. We say sadhu together. Sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Yes, I reopen. I reopen my discussion. All right. Yes.
Yeah, we're not going to sleep tonight because this discussion never ended. No.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Next time.
Thank you, Bhante. Good seeing you.
Okay, bye.
See you next
Bye-bye.
week.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.